Yo, what's up everyone? My name is Andrew Warren, and in today's video, we're specifically going to be talking about Tesla stock in depth prior to S&P 500 inclusion, and most of what we'll be discussing today is going to be all about Friday, which it's almost Friday as I'm recording this, just around an hour or two off from midnight, but I wanted to post a video and just have a little bit of discussion on this before we start to see the market open up at 4 a.m. and then the normal market hours open up at 9:30 a.m. But what I'm really focused on for Friday is the later part of the day and near that market close. And that relates to another big topic that I want to discuss with this video, which is all about the index fund trackers and the fund managers that are trying to get a similar price to the S&P 500 purchase. And this is really interesting because this plays a big role in the movement that we're likely going to see on Friday, because I think a lot of them are going to be waiting until last minute near that market close. And if we try to analyze their intentions and try to gauge why they would make that purchase near the market close, the reason is mainly, at least from what I've been absorbing from a lot of news articles and even fund managers talking about this as well, a lot of them are expecting these big institutional investors to be making a purchase near the market close. And the reason for that, at least from what I've been seeing, is because they want to get as close to that S&P 500 purchase price, because the whole goal of these fund managers and these index fund trackers, they want their funds to replicate the S&P 500. So at a minimum, they want the exact performance or very similar performance to the S&P 500, and if they end up performing better than the S&P 500, then that's a good thing as well. But we have to think about the mindset of a lot of these fund managers, because they're really focused on avoiding a lot of the risk that comes with buying Tesla stock early and potentially paying a higher price, or potentially paying a very different price from the purchase price with S&P 500 inclusion. And if they do that, then it kind of strays away from their goal of mirroring the S&P 500 or keeping them from potentially outperforming it. So we have to consider the mindset of these fund managers and their decision making behind this, because there's a lot of risk for them in terms of the fact that they're basically managing a lot of people's money, and there is a big reliance on these funds to perform very similarly to the S&P 500 or outperform it as well. But to reduce this risk, it's important to consider the fact that they would likely rather prefer to pay a higher price and get a very similar price to the S&P 500, because at this point, at least in my opinion, it seems that their priority is just getting that similar buy-in price to the S&P 500, and a lot of them are likely prioritizing this similarity in pricing. Even if it means they potentially have to pay a higher price with it, they would likely prefer to not have a very different trend in comparison to the S&P 500 in itself. And this is just one of those scenarios where I think they will prioritize paying potentially a higher price just to ensure that their purchase price is similar to the S&P 500. And with this mindset coming into some of these potential purchases, then it kind of goes along with how we view the S&P 500 as they're basically just going to buy at whatever price it is. It doesn't matter for them. And that's where a lot of short-term investors and traders can come in as well, and that's why it gets so confusing as to what could happen tomorrow and in the short term and on Monday as well, because a lot of people are taking this situation into consideration, and some of them may be making short-term moves based on that. Some of them could be buying up shares. Some of them could have already bought a bunch of shares previously with the intention to sell to some of these index fund trackers or to sell to the S&P 500 itself. And then again, there's also probably a lot of people that bought today and are going to buy tomorrow because they're expecting the share price to go up, possibly because of these big institutional investors buying and with the S&P 500 buying. And some of those people that might have bought today and will buy tomorrow, they may be long-term investors. They may be people like myself. They could be potentially new investors to Tesla in general, but still have that long-term perspective like myself, or they could be investors like myself that are simply picking up more shares, expecting a possible surge tomorrow or something Monday. And eventually, I do believe there will be some sort of sell-off and maybe a slight downturn and some opportunity to buy at a discount. However, that is certainly not guaranteed, and by expecting and waiting on that, there's also the risk of someone waiting for a sell-off, it not happening, then the share price grows even more, and they end up having to buy in at an even higher price. And I think a lot of these factors are why so many people are speculating as to what could occur tomorrow, what could occur Monday, and what could occur in the weeks after all of this happens. But overall, if I were to give my general prediction, and I want you all to take this as a grain of salt, do not take this seriously, because I really don't put a lot of confidence into these short-term predictions. I mostly do it just for the sake of discussion and speculating just out of entertainment value and things like that. However, if I were forced to make a prediction based on tomorrow, I think the likelihood of tomorrow being a green day in general is much more likely than if it were, on the other hand, a red day. And overall, I have been pretty bullish on this week, and if we take a look at the portfolio, we're currently up around 5.81%. Now that includes a few days from last week as well, but overall I have been fairly bullish on this Friday and this Thursday, and I was actually looking for this past Monday to be a green day, which it was. I had the feeling of a little bit more uncertainty during the midweek just because, you know, there's a little bit of a distance between then and some of these major dates like on Friday and Monday, so I wasn't as sure in terms of the short-term movement regarding the middle of this week, and in the back of my mind I was probably still bullish on some of those days. I was expecting at least one red day this week somewhere around the middle of that, just because like I said, it's a little bit further off from some of these major days like on Friday and Monday. But overall, even with the red days that we did have this week, they weren't very significant. Most of the red days that I can remember this week have only been down around 2%, and that's very insignificant for Tesla stock since we commonly see a plus 4% gain, minus 3%, minus 4% loss. It's not very uncommon to have those larger movements up and down with Tesla, so for it to only be down that much on the red days, that honestly just makes me a little bit more curious about what's going to happen with this Friday. And having Thursday today being so bullish, it just ignites that curiosity even more. So in general, my expectations for Friday of this week, overall, I would say that I'm expecting it to be a pretty bullish day. I just feel like to be a Tesla investor right now, and especially if you're a long-term investor that is up a significant amount, I just don't understand why anyone would want to sell their shares and speculate on these short-term movements that are really just so unpredictable right now when they know that mandatory purchases are going to be happening. And as someone like myself who began buying Tesla stock earlier this year, I already have some nice gains as cushioning, and I'm not saying whether I'm up or down, whether that would actually convince me to make an investment decision. For me, it's all about my faith in the long-term future of the company, which I'm more confident than ever about right now. But in general, I'm just saying for a lot of the long-term Tesla investors out there, I don't see why they would really be inclined to sell at this point in time when a lot of them probably have so much cushioning with all of their gains, especially if they've been holding it for more than 1 year. And as I stated in the portfolio update today, even if Tesla stock were to go to like $1,000, or even if it went to $1,500 tomorrow, I'm not even saying that's a likelihood or anywhere close to a likelihood. I'm just saying as a point of an example, even if it went to that point, I would not even be considering selling my shares just because that's not the perspective that I have on this stock. And for another thing, if you're a long-term investor, it's really just super simple to buy and hold long-term. When you go for those quick gains in the short term and you actually sell some shares, all it ends up doing is making it difficult for you to grow your position even more, because now you have a certain part of your position that needs to be reserved for your tax payment later on, and you can't just have that full amount invested like you can right now. Because, for example, if I cashed out on this right now, I'd have a certain percent of it that would be taxable, and I wouldn't be able to reinvest even if there were a dip and I timed it perfectly. I wouldn't be able to reinvest the same amount that I cashed out right back in because some of it is going to be taxable because that triggered a taxable event. But even aside from that, I'm just not a short-term investor when it comes to Tesla stocks, so even if it somehow went up to a ridiculous number tomorrow, I would just not even be tempted to sell. And that's just the mindset that I have with this company, and I don't think that's a very uncommon mindset when it comes to a lot of the long-term Tesla investors. A lot of them understand that yes, there is some opportunity for some quick money, but why would you chase after that when there's so much more opportunity for a lot of potential growth in the long term? And it's just a lot easier to not have to worry about trading in and out and buying and selling and all of these things when one can simply just hold shares for the long term. At least that's the perspective that I have with Tesla stock. And of course, anything that I say in this video is not to be considered financial advice. This is me just sharing my thoughts and opinions about Tesla stock and my perspectives. But that's another thing that we commonly hear about this stock as well, where people say they're basically married to their Tesla stock. They don't plan on selling their position anytime soon, regardless of where the shares go in the short term, just because they are in it for this long ride. And I truly believe this is a significant commonality between a lot of long-term Tesla investors, and that's certainly something to take into consideration going into tomorrow. Obviously, there are going to be some short-term people that are going to be trading the stock for some short-term money, but in the long term, I think the long-term investors are going to be the winners. And tomorrow is just a matter of how many people are going for these short-term gains by selling compared to the actual demand, which is likely going to be coming from a lot of these institutional investors, some retail investors as well, but a lot of these fund managers and index fund trackers that are really focused on this S&P 500 purchase on Monday. So it's just a matter of whether that demand exceeds the supply, and also whether the people who do own Tesla stock, are they going to not be persuaded to sell the stock if it does end up going up a little bit tomorrow. So a lot of this is simply just human psychology, and that's why it makes it so unpredictable, because it's not just human psychology among one or two people. It's just so many people in the market that are engaging in transactions with this stock, and there's just no way to perfectly predict that. But what I can say is that I understand the mindset of a lot of Tesla investors, and we also have some insight on what the institutional investors are planning to do as well, but only time will tell with tomorrow. But I'm pretty much just prepared for anything. I think that's what's important. It's okay to be bullish on Tesla stock, but being prepared for anything and making sure that you keep your emotions separated from the market when it comes to the red days and things like that and the sell-offs, that's really important, because if you can't maintain those emotions, then that can lead to panic selling and then eventually potentially regretting that sell as you possibly see the stock price go up in the long term. At least that's the perspective that I take on personally. But anyways, please make sure to smash that like button if you all enjoyed this video. I just wanted to share my thoughts about this upcoming Friday and all of the craziness that could unfold, and just kind of dive a little bit deeper into the mindset of some of these fund managers and the decisions that they'll be making. And like how I discussed, they may be trying to buy as close to that S&P 500 purchase price as possible. And also definitely feel free to check out my referral links in the description below. You can sign up with my referral link to Robinhood and get a free stock, or you can get 4 free stocks in total with Webull, 2 free stocks valued up to $250 for just signing up with my referral link, and then another 2 valued up to $1,600 for depositing $100 into your Webull account. And you should be able to take that $100 right back out after you get your free stocks. That's what I did, and it worked for me. So it's basically just nice passive income with minimal effort, and it also helps support the channel, which I really appreciate. But I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week.